Honors Pre-Calculus 2013 Final Exam Review number 55. Number 55 is very similar to number 54, so you might want to refer back to number 54. And number 55 asks us for the amplitude, period, vertical shift, and phase shift of y equals negative 2 cosine 1/3 x plus pi minus 9. So now we're going to refer back to everything we said in number 54, that we have a general sine equation, and that we can get all these things from it: the amplitude, frequency, phase shift, vertical shift, and period, which is the same as wavelength. Now in this problem, we're asked to list out all these things. So, they give us this little blank here as though we were supposed to list all that information in this little blank. That's probably silly, so we would want to write this out. You'll have on the final exam an answer key where you can write the short answers in. So let's start with the amplitude. So the amplitude, let's write the equation first. So the equation is y equals negative 2 cosine of 1/3 x plus pi minus 9. And one thing that I'm going to do for my format that I use here, I always have the parentheses, there's nothing outside the parentheses. So we do need to change something a little bit here. We need to distribute this 1/3 into that parentheses. Now people have different ways of doing that. So you might have a different way to handle that 1/3. Some people like having the 1/3 out there because then they find the phase shift a slightly different way. But I'm going to distribute that 1/3 back in and call that 1/3 x plus 1/3 pi minus 9. We could call that pi over 3. That might be a little easier. But too late, I already wrote it that way. So now we're going to look at the amplitude, and the amplitude is just the absolute value. And just a quick reminder, it doesn't matter when we're finding these parameters, it doesn't matter if we're talking about sine or cosine. Sine and cosine have the same parameters. We just would draw a slightly different graph for them. So for the amplitude, we're going to say the amplitude is the absolute value of this number. So amplitude is the absolute value of negative 2. And that's 2. So our amplitude is 2. Now I've got the amplitude. For period, we're going to say that the period is 2 pi over omega. Now our omega is here. It's the 1/3, the coefficient of x. So we're going to start by saying that omega is equal to 1/3, and then we can use that to say that the period is, we usually call that lambda, and it's 2 pi over omega. And we can take that omega equals 1/3 and just plug it right in there. So then we have 2 pi over 1/3. We flip the 1/3 over, so we're going to have 2 pi over 1 times 3 over 1, and that equals 6 pi over 1, or just 6 pi. So that's my period. Then I'm asked for the vertical shift. So for vertical shift, and vertical shift does not have any kind of nice abbreviation. Some people would just put VS, but it doesn't really have an official abbreviation like period does. Vertical shift is the minus 9 out here, right? The plus D. So that plus D, of course, if it's a minus, then that just means that the vertical shift was negative. It's negative 9. And then the last thing they ask us for is the phase shift. The phase shift. So we can get the phi, the phase shift, by looking at this little formula. It's negative c over b, and that negative c over b is negative 1/3 over 1/3 pi, actually, because this is our c right here. This is c, and this is b. So we have 1/3 pi over 1/3. Now we could flip this 1/3 over and multiply it, but it's easier to just cancel these two 1/3s out, and then my phase shift is just negative pi. And so now I have found the amplitude, period, vertical shift, and phase shift. I've organized that nicely. It may be a little nice to put boxes around my results so that whoever's grading me can find those easily. And I found all the things that were requested of me for number 55: amplitude, period, vertical shift, and phase shift. And it's worth checking when you have a question that asks for a lot of things. Check to make sure you have answered everything that you've been asked for. That's number 55.